You wake up to the alarm, check your email before fully opening your eyes, and your entire day is scheduled down to the minute. Meetings, tasks, other people's requests, deadlines that you didn't create. In the evening, you collapse on the couch and catch a strange feeling. The day was full, yet inside you feel empty, as if you spent the whole day pretending to be busy instead of living something real. You might call it fatigue, burnout, a lack of rest. But it's not about the number of hours of sleep or the vacation you've been postponing for 2 years. There are things that only you can do, and they remain undone while you tackle other people's to-do lists. As long as this is the case, peace will be deceptive, short-lived, like a sigh before a new to-do list. The question is, what exactly you are putting off for so long that you've stopped noticing it as a separate pain? Imagine a person who promises themselves every year to start something of their own. After vacation, after a project, after the kids grow up, after it gets a bit easier financially. The condition never fully comes because the person waits for the perfect moment instead of taking a step in the present. Years pass, and one day they catch themselves thinking that they have become an expert in surviving other people's tasks and have almost forgotten what it feels like to do their own. Here lies the hidden reason that is rarely spoken about directly. Inner unrest is not about a lack of time management. It is about the fact that somewhere inside there is a work, a thought, a task, a form of expression that only you can bring to completion, exactly as you feel it. As long as this part of life is not set in motion, any relaxation will be a temporary pause before a new anxiety rather than true peace. People often confuse this feeling with laziness or disorganization and start to fight the symptom instead of the cause. They get new planners, experiment with productivity techniques, change jobs, hoping that the new environment will return meaning. But if the main thing is not touched, any of these solutions will bring only temporary relief. What if the anxiety you have been feeling for months is not a sign of a problem with discipline, but a signal that somewhere inside there lies untouched work for which you are here? There is a simple test that usually reveals what you are trying not to notice. Ask yourself what you would do tomorrow if nobody evaluated the outcome and did not pay exactly as much as they do now. Most people get lost on this question, not because they have no answer, but because the answer has long been known and is therefore hidden away. To acknowledge it would mean looking into the eyes of the gap between what you are busy with and what you truly have the ability for. This gap is not abstract. Imagine an evening after a regular work week. You have completed all tasks, answered all messages, received praise from your manager for your promptness. Formally, everything has been done well. But when you sit alone in silence, the thought comes that you have once again served someone else's goals with someone else's hands, and what only you could create remains untouched in your mind. You open the notes where you wrote down a 2-year-old idea, read 3 lines, close the file, and go to sleep with a feeling of quiet betrayal of yourself. This betrayal is not an isolated incident. It accumulates, and it is this, not a lack of sleep, that creates the very noise you call anxiety. It often seems that the solution is to do less of others' business and more of your own in the remaining time. But there is a trap hidden here that almost everyone falls into. It's not about distributing hours between others and your own. As long as you maintain the belief that your work must first conform to some external standard of quality, it will not begin, no matter how much free time becomes available. You might get an extra evening, an extra Saturday, even a month off, and you will spend it preparing to start rather than starting itself. Because you are waiting for a version of yourself that is finally ready enough, experienced enough, flawless enough to put your work out into the light without the risk of making a mistake. This belief in perfection is not your personal weakness, it is built in very deeply. You have been taught for years to compare yourself with someone else's measure, starting from school grades and ending with corporate performance metrics. The external measure is convenient in that it relieves personal responsibility for choice. If you conform to someone else's standard, an error becomes the problem of the standard, not yours. But it is in this safety that hides the price you pay every evening with that very feeling of inner emptiness. As long as you measure your work by someone else's ruler, you physically cannot reach the point where only yours begins, because yours, by definition, does not perfectly fit someone else's measure. Imagine for a second two people with the same writing skill. One has been honing his style for years in private, waiting for the moment when the text will be good enough by the standards he has observed from recognized authors. The other begins to publish a text that is still far from ideal, but is recognizable as his own voice. 3 years later, the first is still preparing, with a growing folder of drafts and a mounting mute shame for not having produced anything. The second has already gone through dozens of versions of himself, made 100 obvious mistakes, but he is understood and recognized precisely for his imperfect yet honest tone. The difference between them is not in talent, but in the fact that one waited for permission to be imperfect, while the other dared to show up as he is. An ordinary Thursday evening. Tasks are completed, the phone is running out of battery from other people's messages, and you are standing in the kitchen, realizing that you still haven't opened that file, that note, that plan that you consider your true work. At this moment, you don't need a new planner or a lecture on discipline. You need one specific action that breaks the habit of waiting for a perfect version of yourself. Open that very thing you've been putting off and make one move in it right now, without preparing, without editing the introduction, without crafting the perfect first paragraph. Write 3 sentences as they come to you. Shoot one short clip, no matter how awkward it seems. Send the email that has been sitting in drafts, without rewriting it for the 10th time. The rule is simple. Make it worse than you dream, but more real than silence. The check of the result will come not in a week, but that very evening. Ask yourself if you feel that same quiet betrayal we talked about earlier, or if this time, there's more peace inside. Usually, the difference is felt physically, as if one detail has fallen into place, even if the result is far from ideal. If the feeling of emptiness remains, it means the action was too small or too safe, and it's worth repeating it a bit bolder the next day. If you ended up doing it imperfectly the first time, don't retreat back to the preparation mode. In correspondence with a colleague, in a conversation with a loved one, in any situation where you used to automatically adjust to someone else's standards, try once to respond in your own way, even if it doesn't perfectly fit the expectations. This trains the same muscle as the main action, only on a smaller scale, where the risk is lower and the habit forms faster. Real work never starts with a mature version of you. It starts with the draft you finally stopped hiding. The peace you have been seeking all these months has never been hidden in a vacation, in a new planner, or in a shorter list of someone else's tasks. It has been hiding in one unpublished text, in one undone thing that only you can complete and only on your own terms. Every evening, when you choose someone else's measure instead of your own voice, the count does not reset, it accumulates. And this sum sounds inside as anxiety, not fatigue. Tomorrow will be another ordinary day, filled with someone else's tasks, deadlines, and praise for promptness. And at some point, most likely in the evening, that same note, that same file, that same thought you have been carrying longer than you admit will resurface. This time, you have the choice to close it for another day, or to make one honest, imperfect move within it. The difference between a person who prepares for years and a person recognized for their own voice is determined in such small evening forks, not in grand decisions to change the whole life. You are not required to come out ready. You are required to come out real. If this video reminded you of something you have been hiding in drafts for too long, give it a like and subscribe so you don't lose this thought in the flow of the next someone else's tasks.